what does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? But I think that, to the point that we're like, hey, let's just hit the record button because we're having such a great conversation in here. We're really going to focus on virtual assistant hiring. Really, my company does that from the Philippines, and it's such a powerful leverage tool that I'm passionate because it's my business, but I'm also passionate because I'm a customer and I know the effectiveness of it. So I want to kind of throw that out in the room a little bit there and kind of go, Heather?
Before we start all discussing, tell the chops.
Yeah, lay it out.
Lay out when you really started with the VAs and what it's done for your business, and then we can discuss from there.
Yeah, so let me start with the why. So the why was I wanted to build a company and I didn't want to get stuck in a job, which was our last show. We talked about job ownership versus being a business owner. I didn't want to get stuck there. And there's certain aspects of business that I don't like, as everybody has that, right? Follow up. I'm a good salesman, but I'm a good talker, right? It's all of the other stuff that comes with sales that I don't necessarily, doing estimates and doing all these things. It really kind of makes me sick to think about. I don't really like it so much. So I'm trying to figure out, look, I need to run the business, and how am I going to do this without completely overwhelming myself and getting stuck? So I got introduced to hiring overseas. And, of course, that always comes – what's the first question, right?
Can they speak English? How do they speak English? How well do they
What
speak
are my
English?
customers going to think when they hear that?
Exactly.
Especially if it's like they're going to answer the phones. You know what I mean? And so then I'm like, okay. And really, I know it's something you're going through right now, but when you hire somebody – and actually we're going through it over here with Tone as well, and he's helping me with some stuff, but it's like hire the right person for the job, right? If you need somebody answering the phones or making phone calls, then they should be understandable, right? They should be great. The one that I hired, Sam, she goes by Sam. Her name's actually Girly, but she goes by Sam.
Yeah.
And it was a funny sidebar, but I asked her, well, why do you, because her name said on the Zoom said Sam, but I know her as Girly. She says, well, Girly doesn't work when you're making calls. So she's smart, right? But her English is phenomenal, really, really good. But yeah, so you hire for that. She's a salesperson for my company, and she's going to be doing outreach and sales. So I needed that English to be spot on.
Right.
So the answer to that objection is, well, just hire differently, right? I mean,
Well, if it's forward-facing, if it's customer-facing, then that's an issue. But, they say that before you even know what they're going to do. People respond that way when they talk about the VA and you tell them they're from the Philippines. Well, do they speak English? Well, if you need them to do data entry, what do you care? As long as they can understand it and get it done. Like, what does it matter? But, again, it's so...
Actually, that does matter because being able to communicate with your employees is super important. And I learned this too because I used to think that too. I'm like, well, does it really matter? But it does because I want to communicate my vision to that employee. I need to be able to talk to them back and forth.
Yeah.
So even data entry person,
and
I don't mean
it's like anything. It's like any other employee. The more they know about your business, understand your business and what you're all about, the more valuable they are to you, right? So you got to be able to communicate with them your vision for their job as well as the vision for the company, because ultimately you want them to come up with some of their own ideas too, right? Right? You don't want them just hey, do this, do this, do this. You want to be like, hey, Nate, I was thinking about this. Would this work? Right? That's how you get a good partnership and actually get really good value out of your employees.
100%. So I started with the what it is that I want, right? My why there. And then when I started executing on it, my wife was freaked out my first hire. She was scared, right? Because we're in the black, right? We're making money, and I'm busy as a one-winged bee.
One-winged bumblebee?
One-winged bumblebee. I love that statement. But I knew I was growing, and I needed to get somebody in place. So I did that, and my wife was freaked out. But afterwards, when she tripled the revenue in her first month, what I was paying her, I was like, she's like, okay, all right, you can go ahead and hire. Now I'm at 17 people, right?
He just said he's at 17 VAs. You don't want to just skim over that.
Oh, we'll get to that too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so I got the one, and then I hired a second one, and I'm just filling positions. But here's another thing too, and I know that both of you guys can speak to it because you guys have both hired VAs using my service, but when you hire somebody, you have to train them now, right? So that's a time sink. So you've got everything else that you're doing, and just like any employee hiring, you're going to have to now sink time into somebody, right? And
that was scary, and that's why I remember even talking to him like, hey, maybe we should delay hiring because I don't know if I got enough time to sink into her, and we ended up not doing it, but I probably didn't get the initial value off day one because I didn't have enough time to sync with her. But over time, over the last couple of months, I think I've had her for 2 months now. It gets better and better every time because I'm able to spend a little bit more time. She understands more about what we're doing as an organization, and so it gets better and better, just like any job, right? So,
and Tone, what's yours? What's your experience?
You're
on the training side.
Yeah, well, I'm a huge believer in training. I know because of the millions of failures that I've had in business, that you have to pay attention to your people, even the very best people. Like, you can pay people a bunch. You can get the very best people in the industry, which I've done. And if you don't help them, simply just HELP them along their way, they're going to fail. And we set up, like, it's something that we talk about a lot now with the VA service and with all the people that we're doing, because you went in, right? You got a VA. It was successful. You hired another and another and another. And like you mentioned, you're at 17 now. But the only reason, and I know this because I know you and I know what you've done, the only reason you're able to do that isn't because you found a cheap labor force. It's not because the business that you have is a hands-off kind of, it's not a putting in a air conditioner business. It's not a one-on-one business business. It's not a handyman service business. It's a business that can run online. And a lot of people are going to see what you've done and think, oh, well, that's because his business is this. It's not that at all. The reason that you've been so successful is because you invested in each and every person you hired. You invested time to help them be successful. And Nate made a great call by not hiring or saying, hey, maybe we should wait because I don't have time. Because we've already seen other business owners hire VAs because they're trying to get out of doing work. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference between delegating work and getting out of doing work. When you're trying to get out of doing work and you just put somebody in there and expect them to do your work, but you don't guide them and train them, you're going to lose. We talked about the pay or pay principle. You can either pay attention to your people and help them along, or you can pay someone else to pay attention to them, but you're going to pay attention somehow. You're going to do it. Well, you're going to pay somehow.
And I think that's like a common problem, whether it be VAs or in-person hires, is people think they're going to hire this person, all their problems are going to go away. Right. And then they don't, or they're like, they recognize that they need training and then they never hire them. And then they wait until it is so busy that is absolutely essential that they hire someone. Like, you cannot get away with not hiring someone now. And you still don't have the time to train them because you're busy as all get out. Yeah. And then you hire someone and you're setting them up for failure. It can be a VA, it can be regular. And I think people underestimate VAs because they think, oh, they're in a different country, they can't do as much. But what you've done is you've taken the same principles that you're supposed to implement in hiring people here, boots on the ground, and you've done it with your VAs, and they're just as smart, just as capable. The only difference is there's a cultural barrier they have to overcome. Some of them are already actively doing it, though. I've met VAs in different industries and businesses, and they watch American TV shows. They take English in college. They work hard so that they can have this opportunity.
And they're aware of the fact that there's that gap. So, like, even now, when we had a VA the other day who had just a dialect issue where they don't pronounce the TH hard like we do, like the. They say duh, right? So it was weather. Are you enjoying the weather? Mm-hmm. And we're weather. And weather is different than weather. Yeah. Right. So, but when you give them that feedback, they know that there's a barrier, so they're willing to learn. They're willing to do that. Mm. Setting people up for failure is one of the best. It's one of the things that job owners are best at. Oh, yeah. It's like job owners are awesome at setting you up for failure. I've been a terrific set you up for failure guy for like the last 10 years, right?
One of my questions with clients, if they're having a lot of employee issues, is how does that person walk into work every day and know exactly how they're going to win in their role?
Yeah, that's a good one.
If you can't answer the question, neither can they.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they end up, people end up doing what they're used to doing, Mm-hmm. So unless you develop a habit, they fall into whatever habit they're in. If their last job, the business owner was hands off and they are with you. See, the thing is, they're with you for a reason. They left a company for a reason, and if you're going to give them the exact same reason to leave, you're going to get the exact same result. So a lot of us leave businesses because you feel underappreciated or because you feel underattended to, and you're underdirected. Those are the reasons people are looking for a job. So when you're hiring, you got to make sure that you could even make a checklist for yourself and say, am I going to be able to direct, attend, pay attention to? Because if you're not, then you figure out how you can make that happen, and do that right.
The hiring process is super critical, right? So you're hiring not only for the skill set, but for the culture, right? So you have a culture with your company no matter what. You think you have a specific culture. And so when you hire somebody, you got to know, hey, is this the right fit for our culture, right? Are they going to be able to fit in with my people, with me, and so forth? When I hired our VA, Sheena, she was probably the least qualified of the ones that you had brought me, but the culture was right. Like, we clicked. She and I clicked right away, and because of that, it's made a world of difference.
That's why I involved the owners in the process. Yours was a different case, Tone, but Tony, he went on my recommendations. It turned out fantastic for him, but sometimes it's a chemistry thing, and it's like I still remember her personality was really good. She did research on your company. Yep. She was like she expressed care and concern about where she was getting in, what she was getting into.
Right.
So that was a good.
You did that pretty much. I mean, every person that worked for you, you spent the time to, invested in the time to keep them or to get them ready to do what you're doing. Why? What made you do that? Was it that you had the time? What made you really do that? Like, what was the motive behind you spending that time? Did you know that you were doing all that, or was it because you were afraid that they had to succeed, you couldn't afford to have them lose? What motivated you to spend that time?
Well, definitely not fear. I'm not motivated by fear. I'm motivated by moving forward. I don't even know if success is a motivator for me. I just want to advance. I want to do better. But the motivation for the training was, how would I want to be treated? It sounds really kind of, cheesy, but and that's the way I treat my customers too. It's like, if I'm in your shoes, how do I want to be treated? Now, if I'm not doing my part responsibly, that's one thing. But if I am doing my part responsibly, I want the support of the employee or the employer in this particular case. So that's what motivates me. And I genuinely care about the people that I'm hiring. It's like, I want you to succeed. If it's a good fit, if it's not, we'll figure it out. If there's something else you can do, fine. If not, then you'll be on your way, and it's just the way things are. I'm a businessman. I get it. But at the end of the day, I want to do the very best that I can, so that if somebody was like, well, how did you treat this employee, or this employee said, I treat everybody the way I would want to be treated. Bottom line.
And that's even come up in some of our conversations, because I've asked or suggested about things that you could do to make it more plannable. And you're like, no, I wouldn't want that in my experience with a business, and I'm not going to do it in mine. And I think keeping that authenticity is huge, because when someone's hiring from the Philippines, they're not going to see the person. They can't be face to face with them. So their trust kind of has to fall on you as the business owner, which I think is great, that you're so visible. You're out there, you're on LinkedIn, you're on social media. People can get to know Marc. Therefore, when you are in the process of hiring their VAs, they can trust that it's someone they can trust with their business as well. And
you see the loyalty come out too. If you spend any time around any of the people that are working for me, they are like, I like this company. I like it here. And that's a good culture. I'm not saying it's not all lip service, right? There might be some of that in there, but I think by and large, I've created a really good company culture that people want to be a part of, which is good for my clients, because now they don't have to worry as much about their person leaving. They're going to be around it.
Well, let's get into what VA is. I mean, what it is, like what the VA services that you provide. What it is that you're doing. Because VA, we're assuming that everybody that's listening or seeing this knows that VA stands for virtual assistant, right? It's somebody that's not in your brick and mortar store or in your local area, maybe necessarily. They could be here, but they don't have to be. So in this case, you're hiring right now to the Philippines. What motivated you, or what is the reason that you feel comfortable hiring out, like outside of having them in front of you? Like, what gives you that confidence to be able to do that?
Well, I think all of us we're understanding that we're kind of a global society nowadays. I mean, virtual staffing, remote employment is a thing. It's okay. It's okay to be comfortable with that. But for me, it was solving issues, right? What do I not want to do, right? So, I mean, cold calling is one of the reasons why I started a podcast. I didn't want to have to cold call in order to get in front of businesses, right? Not like, hey, why don't you hire me for this? But certainly lead generation, cold calling, customer service, things like that. These are tasks that I'm not great at. I was doing them all at one point, and then I started outsourcing them as I go, and I was getting my time back. I still remember that conversation. I talk about this all the time with my wife, and she walked into that bedroom where my office is, right? It's my office bedroom thing, right? Converted space in my house. And I had sat back, I had just hired my second person. I'm like, I did not realize how busy I was. And I was addicted to that once I realized this is so freeing. And I've had a couple other levels, 2 more levels since then, where it's like a whole weight comes off. And as a business owner, I'm a thinker. I'm a visionary, much like you, Tone, and I like to visualize things, but I'm an executioner. I have to execute on that. Otherwise, it's just fluff.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned having someone else do things that you don't want to do, right? Is that your favorite? So I this weekend I met with somebody that we're going to talk to about a VA service, right? And he's a salesperson in a big one of the world's largest landscaping companies, and he's been there for 27 years, and he's one of the top 3, and they all kind of share that spot, right? And because of the nature of their job, there's only so much time in a day. You can't cut trees at night, so you can only do things during the day. So there's a limited amount of time that you can spend. You can't, prospect at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night. So there's a limited amount of time. There's a bunch of limitations, and when you've been doing it for 27 years, you max out. You might have that little 10% every year growth goal, but you're still kind of maxed out to a certain degree. What increases that is a couple extra clients. But again, if you don't have a lot of time, you've only got a certain amount of trucks, and you hit a limitation, you can hit a cap. So in his case, instead of things that he doesn't want to do, I'm asking him, could you hire a VA to do things that someone else can do? Yeah. Meaning that what is it that you're doing that anybody here could do, or someone here could do besides you? Yeah. So you got to look at, you can identify things that you don't want to do and hire a VA, or you can identify things that anyone else could do and hire a VA.
Well, to that point,
get your time.